five-legged frogs, and there's very high lung cancer in the Navajos who are downwind, and very high bladder cancer in Navajos who are downcurrent from the mining activities. And a number of years ago, the cancer rates were so high in some Navajo families that the EPA flew over the Navajo reservation and did a survey identifying the hogans that were very radioactive and bulldozed them. These families had taken uranium ore, which is very soft and easy to cut into building blocks, and they had constructed their hogans with it. And so the whole family were being exposed to radon gas and polonium and uranium all in the dust in the house. You can't live in a uranium mine house and not get sick. And it's actually very, very sad. I have an excellent film, about 25-minute film on a DVD. People can purchase it if they want to. It's called From Uranium Mines to Uranium Weapons, and it's a visit to the Navajo Reservation and interviews with the miners who are sick and dying and their families. And something terrible the U.S. government did after they used them for the uranium mining, for the nuclear weapons program, they refused to recognize the marriages of the Navajos as legal under U.S. standards, and they could therefore refuse the widows and families of the miners from any U.S. government benefits. So everywhere these corporations and these governments undertake these activities related to nuclear technologies, they use the people, and when they're sick, they discard them and throw them away. They kick them to the curb. And this is certainly very true today. I mean, it's just such an egregious abuse of our young men and women who are serving in the military. The British, the Japanese, the Canadian, the American, all the allied forces, and even the UN peacekeepers have a 55% medical disability rate because of the depleted uranium weapons. Now, in India, they have also been have done studies around uranium mines there, and there's a pamphlet out now, Black Magic of Uranium, at Jadugoda. I can send this to you to post. And this is a study on the health status of indigenous people living around this mine. And the cancer, the birth defects, the diabetes, all the illnesses that are related to radiation are very, very high around this area. So,
well, this is maybe a good time to transition to the second part of our program. We have about 20 minutes left.
Uh-huh.
And I know that you wanted to do a global and a U.S. update to get to the whole global issue of how the DU is being synchronized with the bombing and from a depopulation viewpoint.
Yes, I just wanted to mention the Castlegar Current newspaper.
Oh, right.
And on Thursday, May 17th, 2007, they had an article that people can actually read on your website, and it's titled "Message on Uranium, Keep It in the Ground." And this is the message from a public event where Dr. Robert Woolard spoke, and he just said, he said, keep uranium in the ground. That was his message at a public information forum on uranium mining and exploration in British Columbia, and I certainly agree with that. So let's move on.
Yeah, well, now that you mention it, I just want to bring up this one connection which you were able to do in Hawaii, and now that we have these preliminary observations at all of the Canadian Forces bases in Alberta, at which there's apparent contamination, radioactive contamination, where apparently they've been using depleted uranium rounds for training and perhaps other purposes. What is it possible, now that you're coming up to the Castlegar area, to begin to get something of a citizens movement going to begin to monitor this and bring it to public attention here?
Well, that's a very, very important comment. And what I did in Hawaii, I wanted to get a depleted uranium bill in the state legislature of Hawaii, because it's been a cover-up at the federal level since 1991, when DU was introduced to the battlefield by the U.S. forces. And these poor soldiers and their families and their wives and their children, the whole family's dying together. They're all affected. And I was so outraged at the way the soldiers are treated, not just in the United States, but all the other countries too. And the Canadian soldiers have fared no better. So I went to the state legislatures, and I had about 37 bills started in different legislatures in the U.S. Some had passed the bills already. Some had 2 bills. I think California had 3. But I went to Hawaii a year and a half ago, and they didn't even believe me. I said, well, all the gunnery and bombing ranges are contaminated. And I went back 6 months later in January, and the people were furious. They said, everything you told us is true, only it's even worse. And they had managed to get 3 depleted uranium bills into the legislature between the beginning of October and the mid part of January of 2007. So you and I went on our speaking tour of Southeast Asia, and I came back to Hawaii in March of 2007, just a year ago, and testified in the legislature. One bill went all the way through. It was passed in both houses, but the chairs of the Finance Committees refused to fund it. So I got furious and went to the Big Island of Hawaii, where I knew they were doing live fire training with depleted uranium, and I borrowed a Geiger counter, got a very high reading, 35 miles downwind from the gunnery range, and flew back to Honolulu and went on TV, ABC TV. And that video clip, it's 2.5 minutes long. If you do a Google search, Google video search on my name, Leuren, anybody listening can see that 2.5 minute clip that I'm telling you was the shot heard around the world. And I started a Geiger counter movement with citizens in Hawaii. They were sitting around the bombing and gunnery ranges in their homes with Geiger counters plugged into their computers, establishing a database with readings every minute. And I want to come to Canada and do that as well. And what has happened is this is such a threat to authorities. It's citizens doing surveillance on government instead of government doing surveillance on citizens. And now the police chief in New York City is panicking because New York City's radioactive from 9/11.
Exactly.
And he is trying to get a law passed desperately that makes it illegal for any citizens to own a Geiger counter or any air monitoring equipment or to make any measurements. So a little action like that, I mean, just a 2.5 minute news story and a little Geiger counter has really created havoc and chaos for the authorities, and that's exactly what we want to continue doing, is to keep them honest, because they are certainly very dishonest.
Exactly.
And it's costing us with our lives. So it's certainly justified.
Exactly. Good. Well, I certainly hope that comes out of your speaking tour in Castlegar and your work with NDP Member of Parliament Alex Adamanenko, who, as you know, we've served him with expert reports by Dr. Chris Busby and Dr. Douglas Rockey on the impacts and health effects of depleted uranium weapons in the context.
And I will be providing my report to him when I meet him in person.
Good, because he has in a public forum that both you and I participated in, he has committed to bringing this issue to the floor of the House of Commons of Canada, that the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission rules and statutes, as well as the U.S.-Canada Nuclear Cooperation Agreement, prohibit the use of Canadian uranium in any weapons, including depleted uranium weapons. And in fact, most of the depleted uranium weapons in use right now around the world, and since the 90s and through the Afghanistan and Iraq wars, are made of Canadian uranium.
Yes,
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm through. I'm just making that statement that Canada is complicit in this worldwide genocide and depopulation in flagrant violation of its laws, and that the Harper government, in full view of the Parliament on national media, fired the director of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission on the floor of the Canadian Parliament. I mean, it's so shameful here, Leuren, that they do it in full view, in full public view.
It's
and you know, Canada is such a colonial country. This is possibly the most colonial country on the face of the planet. It is an utter colony of the City of London. It is its uranium mine, and that's about the size of it. And I think that the Mohawks have it right. And the Harper government fired the head of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, whose charge it is to ensure that no Canadian uranium is used in any weapons worldwide. And they fired her on the floor of the House of Commons with her there, and nobody beeped. Nothing happened.
It's because they're all complicit, and and the gloves are off. It's all on the front page now, and it's all on the Mohawk Nation News front page.
Yeah.
That list of 80 people, individuals from all kinds of backgrounds and industries and organizations and categories. They're all there on that list, and there's no way to deny it.
If you go to David Orchard's book on the history of Canada, which was a great eye-opener to me, there are two categories of peoples who, in fact, have kept Canada independent of the U.S. over the last 3 centuries. Do you know who they are?
No.
They are the First Nations people.
Of course.
Number one, and the American exiles.
Oh.
And those are the two. And Lower Canada or Upper Canada, Toronto always wanted to surrender and go over with the Americans.
Yeah.
And that perdures and endures to this day, where the bulk of the Canadian population and the bulk of the hierarchy is complicit in poisoning and depopulating the world with Canadian uranium
and
in ionizing radiation in Canadian depleted uranium, which is a conscious conspiracy to depopulate the world. And all of this is proved. All of this is absolutely proved and has been shown before the Tokyo International Tribunal for War Crimes in Afghanistan, and is brought again and again and again. The last time it was brought was in 2 100-page briefs, which we personally served on the New Democratic Party within the last 6 months to Alex Adamanenko and to Alexa McDonough and to the entire, upper caucus of the NDP.